Welcome to Mentoring37 from the International Mentoring Community. It's about all things mentoring and being a mentor for the world, about mentoring for the world. I'm Dr. Stephen Hobbs. I am the Director of Certification, and with me is Doug Lawrence, who's the Director of Education. And we're jumping into our next episode of Mentoring 37. And one of the ways that we jump in is that we share our definition of mentoring. And today I get to read it. And then I'm going to ask Doug a question about it. So here's our definition from the IMC, International Mentoring Community. Mentoring is about a two-way, trusted arrangement in which the mentor and mentee can form a deeper and richer collaborative alliance, resulting in both learning and growth personally and professionally. So for Doug, I'm just wondering, of that definition, what is like a neon sign blinking at you that we need to pay attention to today?
And usually it gets me vibrating just ever so slightly. But the one word that jumps right out of that definition for me, and it's one that I seem to be on a constant crusade, more or less, to try and get people to wrap their heads around, is the aspect of growing on a personal basis. So for me, mentoring is as you've so very well sketched out, it's that two-way trusted arrangement with the collaborative alliance. And what that fosters is growth, learning and growing on a personal and professional level. And a lot of the corporate mentorship programs, workplace learning programs that I have looked at, and that one of the key elements that always gets dropped out is the personal growth mentoring. So we lose sight of, lose sight of being able to focus on that.
So it's that personal aspect, and I think we've got to keep bringing that to the surface, bringing that to the foreground, that we remind ourselves there's a lot that you can learn as a mentor when you are mentoring.
That's correct. And the other part, I think, too, is the aspect of, we talk about this, looking at some of the other action outcome statements that we have in place. But for me, the one that always jumps out is that if I don't, and I go through this with my mentoring practice, is if I don't address those personal challenges, they become obstacles or barricades to being able to move forward with the person's professional growth.
Very good. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll just share is that Mentoring 37 has three elements to it. There is the action outcome review, just to go over it so that we get a deeper, richer, that's a couple of words that we use a lot in IMC, a deeper, richer perspective of the action outcome. That's part of the certification process. The second part is that we go over a question that has come to us, or Doug goes out and looks for questions on places like Quora, and he brings one back and he shares a story around that question. And the third part is updates, and we do have a few great updates for you today, and a couple of perspectives that we want to share with you. So we look forward to doing that. So what happens is, yes, we have those three topics, sort of like a table of contents, and each one of them we attempt to bring out at least a good 7 points, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, but we do our best to get 7 in. That's Mentoring 37, and we keep it within 37 minutes. That's our intention, always and in all ways, is to get it underneath that 37 marker. Now, there's another couple of reasons why we do Mentoring 37, and Doug, you want to share what those are?
Obviously, people ask the question a lot is, well, why Mentoring 37? And there's two primary reasons for us embarking on this journey. The first is the actual aspect of co-creating through community. So it's all about the mentoring community and how can we collectively work together to be able to take mentoring on a global perspective and be able to, obviously help people, organizations, families, communities, all of those things just be a whole lot better than what we are today. And, there's definitely that place for mentoring to play in that community aspect. And the other part is all about using collaborative conversations about mentoring. And so it's having those collaborative conversations to help bring home to those people, to people in general, organizations in general, the value that mentoring can actually bring, whether it's on a personal level or on a professional level.
For sure, and that's why we're actually following ISO, International Standards Organization Standards and Regulations, is that we're going global. This is to be an international mentoring community, and we're looking forward to growing that out with the listeners and those who are viewing the videos. So here we go. So I think that bridges us very nicely over into the action outcome that we're going to go over today. And the action outcomes that we're talking about, these are the statements that are within the certification of competence. These are the actions and outcomes that you're looking for when you are actually mentoring, serving as a mentor. And we've chosen two today that are quite linked. And it's to demonstrate coaching in the mentoring arrangement and to demonstrate facilitating in the mentoring arrangement. Now, a lot of times people go, okay, coaching, facilitating, mentoring, so what? Right? So long as we got our point across, we have a conversation, everything is great. Well, not quite. I believe that if you know what coaching is about, what facilitating about, what mentoring is about, and how the three of them weave themselves together, it makes for a much better arrangement, a much better conversation with the mentee. And so that's why we're going to, using another word of ours in IMC, is we're going to unpack these two action outcomes for you. We're going to start with coaching. I'm going to share a little bit about that. And then Doug has probably a few things to share, might even have a story to go with it. And then what we'll do is we'll look at facilitating. Again, then Doug will share something from his perspective. And then what we're going to do is attempt to bring those two terms and mentoring together, that weaving together that I hinted at about a minute or so ago. So let's get started and jump into coaching. Now, coaching is what I'll call a process to guide person to manage their accountabilities. A person has accountabilities, responsibilities, and sometimes they get a little stuck in there and they don't quite know what to do. So what they might do for themselves or be assigned is to get a coach to move them along. Now, we have life coaches, we have business coaches, we have process coaches, we have coaches of all kinds that can bring their insights to that person and move them along. So they have the tools and techniques that can guide the person to help the person so that they can self-manage what it is that they have to do. It's not that the coach is going to do it for you. It's that the coach is going to use some tools and techniques so you can self-manage to get those accountabilities and responsibilities taken care of. And they're doing it in such a way as to look for efficiencies and effectiveness and to make sure that it's relevant what you're doing. So they're holding a different kind of space around and with you because they are guiding you to do what it is that you need to do. That's what a coach is going to help you out with. So in a sense, what they're doing is they're going to urge you to fulfill the instructions that have been given to you, or that accountabilities have been given to you, the responsibilities you need to do. So it has a flavor of really leaning into practices, what needs to get done, what you need to do, rather than the concepts, what you need to know, and a lot of maybe the whys that go with it. Because the why will come a little bit later. The coach is attempting to get you to get that how and who taken part. How am I supposed to, who am I supposed to work with? And I can figure out the why afterwards. And the one last piece that I would offer, most times, coaching is really one-to-one. Most times. We hear of group coaching. I understand that. It's not like these terms are absolute and they fall into one box, or no, let's not even go boxes. They don't fit into like guide rails that says this is what must happen. But it's usually a one-to-one, and there are various approaches. I've mentioned that already. So, Doug, you got anything to share around this notion of coaching?
The one thing that I always encourage people to make sure that, number one, they understand what is it that I want to get from this particular type of relationship or arrangement. Is it coaching, or is it mentoring, or is it, facilitative mentoring? What is it that what are the outcomes that I'm looking for? And then be very careful in your selection of who it is that you're going to work with, whether it's the coach, the mentor, or the facilitative mentor, or a combination perhaps of the three. But to make sure that you, number one, understand what you're hoping to get from that, and then you choose wisely as to which path you're going to go down. There's still lots of confusion out there about the differences between each of those particular approaches, for lack of a better choice of words. So there are differences, but there are also a lot of similarities. And for me, what I typically tell organizations is that if you have coaching and mentoring, that's the best possible situation that if you have both operating in your organization, that's the desired state that we hope to get to. Because if one is kind of struggling in its approach to move an employee along, the other one will certainly be able to step in and help to be able to maybe gain that desired outcome that we're looking for.
For sure. Okay, well then let's take a look at facilitating here. Facilitating is the process about drawing ideas from the persons that are there. Usually it's like a group. Again, I will share is that it can be a person drawing ideas, insights, suggestions about something. So it's the drawing from that group. And again, there's many tools and techniques that are available to you to do this facilitative work and to engage in the discussion and dialogue that you are looking for within that group. So when you go to facilitate, it's not just about drawing ideas and people just answering, writing it up on the board. It's also having some discussion and dialogue in response to some of the questions that are in there. Now, the facilitator could ask those, or even the group members will start to ask some of the questions. And it's really about attempting to get some insights from the group that's going to help with the decision making for the group itself, or it may be insights for how the group is going to go and work with other groups or work with customers, whatever it might be, working in the community. So there is that element that goes with it. And I would like to think when a facilitator is doing a great job, then it's easier and better for the conversations. We talk about collaborative conversations. So there are collaborative conversations even with the facilitating, because really what the facilitator is attempting to do is get the concepts out so that you can then get at the practices afterwards. And that's important because you want to understand the who and the why before you get to the how when you're facilitating. Because if you're facilitating, just give me techniques, that's the concept part of it. But a lot of people will go, oh, then I'll go grab that one and I'll go do that. No, what it is to bring those together and then group decide what might be the best approach to go with that. So again, I just suggest that facilitating usually is one-to-many. It's one to a group. I've been known to facilitate a person and be able to say, okay, what's some ideas about how you want to live your life, how you want to grow your business, how you want to manage the people that you're working with. So I will use facilitating as well. So Doug, thoughts?
One of the ideas that comes to mind is every 2 weeks I host what we call a mentoring circle. And the approach that I use is I facilitate the dialogue that's going to take place. So I will go armed with a number of questions that I use as a means to start to promote the dialogue, to help nurture it along. One of the things, though, that I wanted to, as you were explaining some of the, the potential outcomes, was what I've experienced with some of the people that attend is that they sometimes don't totally engage in the conversation, but what they're doing is there's a personal takeaway that they get from the dialogue that they take back to the workplace and they can put it into practice. One of the examples is, I know that one of the attendees knew that she was going to have a difficult conversation with her supervisor around behavior and stuff like that. And what she ended up leaving the mentoring circle with was a number of tools that she could use to help have that conversation so that it didn't become a crucial conversation and one obviously filled with conflict. So, excuse me, there are a number of, certainly a number of different outcomes that can come from that. Our group is such that people will bring challenges, opportunities, and that to the table that we can go through as a group. And my job, excuse me, in that particular case is to just continue to ask the right questions to help guide them where they need to go. But that's, from a facilitative mentoring approach using facilitation skill sets, that's worked absolutely phenomenal for me with the mentoring circle.
For sure. And then we're looking at actually, we're in April now, May, possibly by the end of May, we're going to have a program available about how to run a mentoring circle that you can then take up using facilitative mentoring and coaching as well. So that will be coming, one of our announcements in May. So we'll look forward to that part. I guess where we'll go now is that the weaving of these together. So if coaching is to give you guidance so that you fulfill the accountability that's assigned to you. In other words, we're going to urge you to self-manage yourself to get things done. Facilitating is to draw ideas out of you so that you can make some decisions. Mentoring is very much about the mentee asking questions of the mentor to tap into their lived experience. So while there's questions in all of them, it's who's saying what to who for what reason. That's the weaving part. And knowing which one you're in at the time and being able to declare it is like wearing the correct hat to the correct event. Because we know if you wear an incorrect hat to an incorrect event, people are going, that hat doesn't fit in here. So one of the things is to get the correctness and then to be able to draw from, question from, listen from the technique that would be called coaching, facilitating, and mentoring. That's what we're attempting to do, because those three are present in the certificate of competence for mentor. Doug, anything you want to add before we move on?
No, I think that was good.
Okay. Well, this is a great segue then into Doug found a question. Doug found another question by someone who is writing something, and I kind of like this one as well. He always seems to find a really great question out there. So what do we got today that we're going to share, Doug?
So this is a question that I responded to on Quora, and the question goes as follows. Is mentoring underappreciated? ? So that's the first part. And then the individual followed through with some of their own thoughts, which were, I certainly would never put it on a tech resume, but maybe other industries are different. So here's my response. I wouldn't say that mentoring is underappreciated. I would say that most organizations and people do not fully understand the value that mentoring can bring to an organization and to an individual. I have a number of people that I am mentoring today that have asked to list me as a reference for them, and they list me as their mentor. That has made a difference in the hiring process for them, in that it shows progressive learning and development as an employee. Some of these would include people in the tech industry. I encourage you to discuss with your mentor the idea of your mentor being listed as a reference for you. Depending on the nature of your mentoring relationship, they may be able to offer some great insight into your abilities. Please bear in mind that your conversations are confidential, so that will determine what your mentor can share with a hiring manager. When I am called to give a reference, I always advise the hiring manager what I'm able to discuss and what I am not able to discuss. I also indicate that I will advise when I'm not comfortable answering a specific question.
So really it's about two things. Is mentoring appreciated? And I think we both would nod our heads, yes, it is appreciated by those who know it. And that's why one of the things we're doing with IMC is getting the story out there in a wider audience about the use of mentoring, how you can serve as a mentor. But it's kind of interesting that the person would pick up on, would I put it on a tech resume? I thought that's what I found kind of interesting here. Why wouldn't you put it on a tech resume? It's probably one of the best places to do a lot of mentoring is in the technology field in today's world, with things just moving so quick. And it wouldn't be seen as a weakness, I wouldn't think, Doug, would it? Because I think it would be seen as a strength, is that you went to ask someone based on their lived experience for insights to grow your career, grow your skills. So I think it's important, and the way you answered it is to give that sense of it. So I just want to reiterate that part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, for me, I think when knowing some of the people that I do in the tech industry, I think they see mentoring as that sort of that warm, soft, fuzzy side of things. And for a lot of them, that's a difficult place, or that's kind of like no man's land for them. They're not comfortable going there. And as a result of that, it's easier. I'm just not going to put it on my resume.
Which is unfortunate, because actually mentoring and leading, I'm not going to use the word soft skills. I don't use that anymore. I use essential skills, or the creative essentials, as I refer to them. These are the base, actually, that we need to work from. Mentoring is a base that if you're going to manage and lead, you want to have mentoring in your way of doing things. Yeah. Right? You need it when you are in the workplace. You need it in your life. There are people you talk to that you engage in mentoring conversations. And once we click in and go, oh, yeah, I guess I just did, didn't I? Yeah. The more that this is going to grow for people. Yeah. So I just share that part. Okay. Well, why don't we move into the third part of our program, because there's a number of things that we want to share with you. One of them is that, again, you can access the self-assessment for the Certificate of Competence course now. And if you go to wealthmovement.com/mentor, that's WELLTH movement.com/mentor, you will see a button that says access the self-assessment. And there's three ways you can pay as you go, which would be free. There's a $17 version, a $37 version. We didn't want to put money as a barrier to access. So you can go through the self-assessment, and based on that, you have then an option to get a hold of, in this case, it would be Doug, and get a 15-minute consultation about the answers that you gave to the self-assessment to find out which way you want to go. And one way may be, it was great to take the self-assessment, thanks very much, take care, we'll see you later. Or Doug can suggest a pathway forward for you. And we have lots of paths for you to be able to nurture you along in understanding mentoring, and from practices and from concepts point of view. Now, another thing that's going to be coming up, and that's going to be April the 9th at 10 a.m. Mountain. I'm going to do a webinar on the mannequin model and how it applies to mentoring. And this is it's a great little model for understanding how the relationship and the arrangement exists between the mentor and the mentee. I call it the mannequin model is because, and I'll share this more in the webinar, when I'm actually working with a group of mentors to help them improve their practice and increase their knowledge, I will sometimes wheel in some mannequins and put them in the front of the room. And then what happens is, as the day goes along, people start to take the place of the mannequins. And therefore, instead of static, no conversation, people start having conversations. That's what I call the mannequin model. It's just an education approach, but there's a lot of deepness there. If you're a mentor or you're learning about mentoring, it's a great model to learn about. The other key thing to that webinar is I want people to understand these 5 things. That to be a mentor is to help organize the dialogue. To be a mentor is hold space. To mentor is to care for the mentee. Also, the mentor has to care for themselves. We sometimes forget that, so I want to mention that. And it's to sustain the mentoring agreement. That's what the mentor is doing. So we'll be talking about those in the webinar as well. Now, you mentioned earlier, Doug, about mentoring circle.
We have a mentoring circle, so it's every 2 weeks in Regina in a local coffee shop. And we actually have this coming Saturday is the next meeting of the mentoring circle. And so typically we've been getting, 6 to 8 people. But what I'm noticing is there's been a bit of a shift in that we're getting probably 2 or 3 new people now every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And some are coming to learn more about mentoring. Some are coming to network. Some are coming to actually work their way through some challenges that they may very well be having themselves. And the sort of, I call it the core group that has been, coming to the circle for probably the last couple of years now, they are the ones that are promoting more and actually attracting the newer people to come to the circle. And I think we kind of touched, I think you mentioned the idea of putting together some more material so that we can take the mentoring circle outside of Regina and give people some tools to be able to facilitate a mentoring circle as well. And I think that, when we tie this all together with what we've talked about so far today, it's a great place for us to do just that, is to start to promote the circle and have people in various communities and that are excited about mentoring start to take on the responsibility of running the mentoring circle in their particular geographical area.
For sure. So we'll be hearing lots more about it, as we mentioned earlier, from May, in terms of putting together self-assessment and a certification program, if you want to go through it. But again, if you wanted to reach out to Doug, there will be a contact information at the end of the video. But I would just, Doug, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Your contact page, what is that?
Well, they can reach out to me through www.talentc.ca, and there should be a contact button on the page to be able to contact. They can do it that way. I also do scheduling through Calendly as well, and so that's another option. I mean, I can provide that.
Another thing I wanted to share is how important mentoring is to get people to understand in real world time practical examples because of the lived experience of the mentor. Now, I've been scanning some posts about mentoring, and a lot of it's to do with youth, and that's great. But I came across one out of the University of Toronto, and it was a CSR course and corporate social responsibility. And they did a lot of mentoring in that course to move the participants forward. And their live project, the real world project, had to incorporate mentoring in it. So it wasn't just do something and then say thanks for it. No, you had to actually do some mentoring while you were in there. And I thought that was great. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Toronto University College for doing that. Now, the next thing that I think is important here, and this goes back to what Doug also does through Talent C, his organization, because both Doug and I have our own organizations, but we co-founded the international mentoring community. If that's not been apparent, then I'll say it out loud now that the two of us have done that. And I asked him if he would just talk about the steps of a mentoring program. Now, I don't know what he came up with, folks. I just asked if he would play around with a little bit of that. And so what have you got up your sleeve for us today, Doug?
What I wanted to do was the Association for Talent Development actually published an article that talked about the 5 steps towards an effective mentoring program. And so I've gone through and I have taken a look at the 5 steps, and I'll touch on those real quickly. But from my experience, there was a couple gaps that I think that we obviously would like to be able to have a conversation around. So the 5 steps that they identified was define your why, engage your stakeholders, create quality connections, consider how you will match, monitor, and manage. So defining your why is, I probably put that in different terminology. And for me, it's about what is the business problem that we're trying to solve by a workplace mentoring program. They're using this concept, and I think it's probably partly driven by Simon Sinek, and it all starts with why. So I think we're kind of getting there to some extent, but what I'm always focused on and suggesting to organizations is that it's really important to have a business problem that you're trying to solve so that you can measure the success of the program. So that's point number 1. Engage your stakeholders. I think when we talk about that, we also need, what's not included in this is the aspect of a communication strategy. So starting, to build up the hype that we're going to be launching this program in our organization. Here's some of the benefits and so on and so forth. So promoting the workplace mentoring concept and being able to do that. But you also still want to make sure at the same time that you are in fact engaging the stakeholders. That's absolutely paramount as well. Creating the quality connections. So that's part of the matching process. So being able to, with some degree of certainty, being able to match mentors and mentees so that they're going to get the best possible mentoring experience that they possibly can get. Now, what's not touched on, and I think needs to be addressed, is the aspect of what role does technology play in assisting with creating those quality connections. And the 4th point they talk about is consider how you'll match. The idea behind the research that I did said that if you have 50 pairs, so 100 people or more in your workplace mentoring program, you should probably think about exploring the option of a technology solution, so a mentoring software. So, and with that, they create the algorithms and the profiles and that, and a lot of the matching, which normally was done in a manual process, can now be automated and save you a whole bunch of time. And there's other benefits to the whole mentoring software approach, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And finally, the monitoring and the managing of the program. So, regular check-ins and so on and so forth. And I'm involved in some programs right now where, initially there was lots of great contact back and forth between the program administrators and me as the mentor, and it's kind of dwindled, and you'd like to be able to say, well, I think that's maybe because I'm doing okay with my mentees and things are going well, that the program manager is just leaving well enough alone. But every once in a while, it's just nice to have somebody reach out and kind of say, how's it going? Is there anything we can do to help you, to be more successful? So that, when I go through the article, it's a good job at capturing things at a very high level, but we need to, drill down. What's also interesting is that it doesn't get into it here, but, around the structure of the program is how often, how frequent are the mentor and mentee to meet? Are we going to explore that, oh my gosh, personal growth side of mentoring? Are we going to, so there's not a lot of conversation around that. That should come out in the structure. And then finally, one of the key components, one of the four or five main reasons, I think it's number three. Yeah, number three. The third most important reason why mentoring or workplace mentoring programs fail is lack of training, and training is not addressed in this article whatsoever.
Okay. So I certainly pull out the technology piece and the support of that. And we are going to start weaving in a technology section into Mentoring 37. Doug has been out doing some questioning, and we're going to do some interviewing, and we're going to be bringing those snippets into Mentoring 37 as well. So that's an important element there. So we just want to acknowledge that on April the 16th at 10 a.m. Mountain, we will be doing Mentoring 37 again. So that's in 2 weeks from now at 10 a.m. Mountain. And if you want to join us, just let us know. Again, there's the contact information. And if you want to jump on the video with us, maybe ask a question, we'll weave you into the question part. Rather than going to Quora, we'll take a live question from someone in the audience. Next week, we're going to share use reflective practices for formative evaluation, and we'll be going over that. And as we always do, and I always ask, Doug, take us out whatever way you want to take us out.
And as we bid you fond farewell, make every minute a mentoring minute.